Hello and welcome to another edition of Council Countdown. Today we have two meetings. I'm Chloe G and I'm here with our Public Information Officer, Hannah Nichols. Our first one we have coming up at 3 p.m. is the Finance, Administration, and Economic Development Committee meeting, and then following that we will have our regularly scheduled County Council meeting. So Hannah, thank you for joining us. You want to tell us a little bit more of what we can expect today?
Of course. Thanks for having me, Chloe. We have a packed schedule today. For those of you following along at home, this is just a reminder you can always view our meeting calendar, our agendas, our minutes, and our packets at BeaufortCountySC.gov. So today we're going to start with the Finance, Administration, and Economic Development Committee meeting. That's going to start at 3. And that meeting will kick off with an ordinance appropriating funds from the state ATAX funds as recommended by our county committee. And then that's going to be followed by an ordinance amending this year's budget to accommodate for fleet services, the construction of a hangar at Beaufort Executive Airport, and the waiving of a loan to Beaufort Executive Airport. As a reminder to our audiences, these are ordinances, so that means they have to go through 3 readings at council if they are approved by the committee today.
So this one is before the readings. This is just the
So they have to be presented to committee. Committee says yay or nay. And if committee approves them, then they go to county council, where they will have 3 further public readings before they are adopted as law, essentially. So item 10 today is a resolution that will accept grant funds in support of Project Micro, followed by the awarding of a contract to build Beaufort County community centers. This meeting will close today with the discussion of the 2025 council calendar and some reappointments to our boards and commissions. I can't believe it's already time to do the calendar again.
I know.
But here we are in late October.
It's been a very quick year, and the next 2 months are just going to fly by very quickly.
So after our committee meeting today, we hope you stick around to 5 p.m. where we will have Beaufort County Council. For that meeting, we're going to start, as always, with a report from our county administrator, and then we have 4 proclamations tonight. We've got one recognizing Red Ribbon Week, one talking about Operation Greenlight, one celebrate Penn Center's 162nd anniversary, and our final proclamation today will recognize the Beaufort County Youth Ambassadors, who I think just had a conference. After that, we're going to have citizen comment, as always, and liaison committee reports before we move into the public hearing and action items, which will always kick off with the approval of the consent agenda. So after that, we're going to see the second reading of an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds. So if you ever hear someone refer to like, oh, we'll pay for that through a GO bond, that's what they're talking about. And then the next 4 items on the agenda tonight are all related to acceptance of county drainage easements or right-of-ways. Item 19 is going to be the first reading of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 247 Robert Smalls Parkway. That's the old Badcock Furniture Building.
Okay.
And then our final item today is going to be the first reading of an ordinance authorizing our administrator to accept the conveyance of a portion of property currently owned by the town of Bluffton. County Council will have an executive session tonight. That means they're going to go behind closed doors and get some legal advice, talk about some private matters, and I've been told there may or may not be items arising out of that executive session.
So it's going to be, sounds like a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff today.
Lots to cover.
And that was a quick overview, but as always, if you're looking for more details, we encourage you to check out the agendas, the packets, the meeting minutes, and more at BeaufortCountySC.gov.
Great. And now we're going to move into some announcements we have from the county. So we know we say this often, but bear with us. We are nearly to the end of hurricane season. But
1 month left.
Yes. We just have some final announcements, just in case there were to be something arise. So we want everyone in Beaufort County to stay as safe as possible. And to do that, we think you should be prepared before it happens. So some things that we want people to be prepared is to know your zone, because in South Carolina, state and local officials issue hurricane evacuations based on your zone if you live in a coastal county. So go ahead and know your zone, and you can figure that out instantly on the SC Emergency Manager mobile app or hurricane.sc, which is South Carolina's online hurricane guide. Some other things you can do is to prepare your home. Do a safety check. Make sure your home is able to withstand the effects of a hurricane. Go ahead and have your roof inspected, double check your hurricane shutters, and make sure insurance policies are where they need to be. Also, go ahead and make lists and photos of some of your important belongings in case something is to go missing. And our last piece of advice is to remember your route. So be aware of the closest hurricane evacuation route ahead of the upcoming hurricane season. Not the upcoming season, but the end of the season. This will allow for a more efficient and safer route out of the hurricane's path. Once you've learned it, memorize it and stick with it. You can also refer to the blue hurricane evacuation route signs that are in place.
Thank you so much for those awesome reminders, Chloe. As we said, we say this all the time, but it really does bear repeating. We had several major storms this year, and we're not out of the woods until November 30th.
Yep, not quite, so hopefully nothing else happens, but you can never be too prepared.
Beaufort County did win multiple awards at the South Carolina Association of County Awards Luncheon last week. These awards are a testament to our team's commitment to innovation, collaboration, and serving our community. From empowering women leaders to strengthening our regional emergency response and coroner services, these projects demonstrate how we are continuously working to improve the quality of life for our residents and ensure efficient use of resources. Beaufort County received honorable mentions for the Emerging Leaders Annual Women's Conference and the Coastal Area Cooperative Partnership. Beaufort County did win the 2024 Barrett Larimore Memorial Regional Cooperation Award for strengthening the regional coroner's capacity. So we won that award in joint with the Charleston County Coroner. So we would like to say congratulations to Beaufort County Coroner David Ott and his staff for another fantastic achievement.
That is, like you said, a great achievement, and I'm so glad that Beaufort County is able to represent well. Another announcement, so tomorrow on Tuesday, October 29th, we're going to be hosting a public meeting for the Salem Road Sidewalk, which is one of the 14 primary locations approved in the 2018 1-cent sales tax referendum. This is going to be held here in Council Chambers in the Administration Building at 100 Rebo Road, and that's going to take place from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. The Beaufort County staff will present the proposed design for the 8-foot sidewalk on Salem Road from SC 170 to Old Salem Road. The sidewalk improves pedestrian and cyclist safety by providing a separate facility from the roadway. The meeting is going to be conducted as an informal and a drop-in format. There's going to be displays there to depict the proposed design, and representatives from Beaufort County Engineering, J. Bragg Consulting, and Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering are going to be there to discuss the proposed improvements, going to answer any questions, and of course, they want to hear your feedback. So there's not going to be a formal presentation, but the proposed design exhibits and other project information are available, and there's also going to be a virtual meeting webpage. You can visit BeaufortCountyPenny.com/meetings to view the information, and you can submit comments by November 14th.
And it's worth mentioning, too, that Beaufort County Penny website has a ton of information on it from all the 2018 sales tax referendum projects, as well as some updated information for the proposed referendum that viewers will find on their ballot this year. So make sure you check that out and know before you vote. The Beaufort County Passive Parks Department has an exciting nature program schedule with birding, trail walks, and special events to help you take it outside. This week, join naturalist Destiny at Whitehall Park at 9 a.m. tomorrow, October 29th, for birding. These events are always free, always family-friendly, and they help our attendees enjoy the wildlife and beauty of our area. Contact the Passive Parks Naturalist at destiny.rains@bcgov.net for more information, or you can see the entire schedule at BeaufortCountySC.gov.
I know we've both got to attend at least one of the events, and it is just a great way to kind of unwind and get outside and get to view some nature. So, yeah, we encourage anybody to go out and participate. So everyone knows it is nearly election time, and early voting has officially entered its second week. So this is a reminder, you can visit early at any of the early voting locations in Beaufort County, just like you would vote on election day. So there's going to be 4 main offices here in Beaufort County, and you can do this through Saturday, November 2nd, anytime between 8:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. The first office is going to be the main voter registration office in Beaufort at 15 John Galt Road. There's also going to be one in St. Helena at the St. Helena Branch Library at 6355 Jonathan Francis Senior Road. The one in Bluffton is going to be held at the Bluffton Recreation Center Gymnasium at 61A Ulmer Road. And then there's going to be one in Hilton Head at USCB Hilton Head, room 115 at 1 Sand Shark Drive. So Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th, so you can go to your polling precincts anytime that day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And please make sure you bring some identification, of course. For more information, if you need to know where your polling location is, you can always find that online, and you can find out everything in Beaufort County at beaufortcountysc.gov/vote.
Residents can also see their sample ballot at scvotes.org in case you're just curious about what exactly you are going to be asked to vote on this year.
There's going to be a lot of important things on the ballot, not just, at the presidential level, but a lot of things on the county level, and we want everybody to have the opportunity to have your voice be heard. So, of course, take this opportunity.
Awesome. The Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, also known as GFOA, has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to Beaufort County for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2023. This report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure, to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management team. This report provides important information to Beaufort County Council, administration, all departments, and our Beaufort County taxpayers concerning how public funds are being spent and managed. You can view the county's financial reports at beaufortcountysc.gov/finance, and we would like to congratulate our finance team for what an amazing accomplishment.
Yes, huge congratulations goes out to them, and it is such an honor. But I do think that's all the time we have, so stay tuned here in just about 2 minutes. The finance meeting will be beginning, and then you can catch us back for the 5 o'clock county council meeting. So thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the meeting.
like to call the Finance Administration and Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Today is Monday, October 28th, 2024. Time is 3 o'clock. We do have a quorum of our committee. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Can I ask for someone to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will approve today's agenda without objection. And I do not see any objection. And Sarah, we do not have anyone online today?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, and let's move on then to approval of the minutes from September 23rd, 2024. Can I have someone make a motion to approve those, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Tabernick. Is there a second, please?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. And is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll approve those without objection, and I see no objection. All right, let's move on to our citizens' comments, and today we do have someone who would like to speak, and this is Mr. Willie Terrell. He's speaking on the finance, the Wesley Felix proposal, and we ask anyone that comes before this committee, let me just read our rules that we have is anyone wishes to speak during the citizen comment portion of the meeting will limit their comments to speak no longer than 3 minutes. Speakers will address council in a respectful manner appropriate to the decorum of the meeting, refraining from the use of profane, abusive, or obscene language in accordance with the Beaufort County rules and procedures. Giving a speaker's time to another is not allowed. And of course, Mr. Terrell, I didn't expect any of that from you, however, just reading the rules, so
Absolutely.
3 minutes is yours. Go ahead,
All
sir.
right. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Willie Terrell from Folly Road, St. Helena Island. I'm speaking directly to number 11 on the county minutes, and that is the building of the Wesley Felix Community Center. My concerns are simple. On St. Helena Island, we have a health center in the Beaufort Jasper Comprehensive Health Center that is largely underfunded, underutilized, and it sits in the woods. There's a proposal now to build an additional health center 4 minutes away in Wesley Felix for $1.3 million. It seems to me as a gross misuse of funds to build another health center in the woods when the citizens of St. Helena Island, one, don't have the resources or the opportunities to get to the first health center. When I went to San Francisco Center and talked to the nuns and a lot of people who pick up free food there, their issue is always travel and transportation. You got $1.3 million and you have one health center that's sitting there underutilized, underfunded. Why not take that money to put to the health center that's already existing and use those funds to address the problems that people have on St. Helena, which is transportation to the health center and having proper and adequate services once they get there. So I'm confused about why the allocations of another health center in the woods and what kind of research was done to ascertain what are the problems on St. Helena and what's the best way to address it using these funds. And I'm kind of confused in why they came up with another health center, underfunded, underutilized in the woods. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Terrell. All right, Sarah, is there anyone else that we have that would like to speak during comments? No? All right, then let's move on then to number 7 on our agenda, and Assistant County Administrator Report. Mr. Hank Munson, Special Assistant to County Administrator, and John Robinson, Assistant County Administrator. Oh, there you are, Hank. I was looking over here. Making a grand entrance. We
Good
appreciate it.
afternoon. I'm just here to give an update from what we spoke about last month in ARPA, how much money was left over for allocation, how much money was spent. I took out all of the long slides. I can send it to you again of what has been spent and obligated. I wanted to really fixate on the variables that we looked at last time. So if we could go to the, oh, how about that? Nice. This is just the basics. We know that this much money we received at the end of 2021 and received it in 2022. These are the dates. One of them is very looming. That's December 31, 2024. That's why we're here again. And last time we spoke about what was remaining. So these, the health department relocation, that has already gone to committee. That is now at council, actually this evening. The community centers are at committee today. Broadband initiative is currently has an RFP that's on the street. We have a pre-bid meeting this Thursday, and we'll have that proposal to council probably in the December meeting. Hope we're trying for November, but it's probably gonna be December. And one that did not happen is the National Park signage program. We had it all ready and agreements in place, and the group said that they wanted to go in a different direction. So I'll talk about that in a second, of what can be done with that funding on my next slide. And the last one, it says contract coverage, but that covers staff, reporting, et cetera, for the next 2 years, 2+ years. These are the variables we're waiting on. So what happens tomorrow? Maybe we just talked about the $3 million for the health department is coming to council tonight. The $3 million for the community centers is coming to committee today. The variables are here. And so we have confidence. We've gotten good interest from multiple communication companies about the broadband initiative grant that we've gotten many questions, which shows good interest, and we are looking for great responses when they come in. But that National Park signage program is not gonna happen. That's okay, because we've been approached by the sheriff for a public safety initiative that we can bring back for approval. Has to do with cameras, and I can defer to the
License plate cameras is what the sheriff has approached us for. They could be used to identify vehicles and individuals.
So we would bring that back for the official approval. But that's a good use. There would be a split funded with the sheriff potentially. And there are other uses, but that's why I think I should do one more of these updates in the November meeting to report on these last few stragglers. But I just wanted to let you all know that's where we were today.
All right, any questions for Hank?
You'll send us this PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am.
So you can-
Hey, Hank, real quick, while you're up there, could any of this funding be used to repair some of our boat launches?
Not by the rules.
Okay.
But my point is, just so you know what I'll report on in the next month's meeting, there is a category that's called revenue replacement. And it's basically like a standard deduction, right? So you get $37 million, and governments could go through this exhaustive process to show how much revenue they lost, or take a $10 million standard deduction, and that gets to be used for regular operations. We have used a lot of that, but that's, on my last report, that's where I think if there could, but it's not anything significant money-wise to really make the required improvements to some of the some repairs are one thing, but Wimby Creek, for example, is a big undertaking, just as one example.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Hank, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Run while you can.
He's getting away quick. Good afternoon. So we're going to start, this is the Finance Department update. So you see our finance team is here as well. We're going to start with Valerie Alatoff, our budget manager, is going to give you a quick brief on our budget transfers. Then Dave Thomas is in the other side of the room. He's going to update you quickly on some procurement activity for the past month, those that are going on. And I'm going to finish up with a review of the general fund balance. We'll take a shallow dive into that pool.
Ms. Altoff, welcome today.
Hello, thank you for having me. So in your packet, you got the budget transfer recap list. It's very small and hard to read, but between the last meeting and this meeting, we had a budget transfer from solid waste from professional services to site development for $70. Then we had one from the Hilton Head Airport from capital equipment to miscellaneous expenditure for $113,000. We had one from stormwater from capital equipment to vehicles for $400,000. We had one from Public Works from non-professional services to land acquisition for $10,000. Then we had another one from the airport for repairs to building to vehicle maintenance services for $3,000. Then engineering put one through for from professional services to dues and subscriptions for $1,000. The sheriff's office from their special revenue fund, from the drug seizure project code, from vehicle purchases to trust funds dispersed for $15,000. And finally, we had another one from solid waste, from professional services to dues and subscriptions for $1,000. And all the justifications are listed there. That's what came through on the budget transfer forms. I can try to answer any questions that you have. If not, I'll have to defer to other folks.
Any questions for Ms. Altoff? Yes, Ms. Thacker.
Well, you'll probably have to defer to Mr. Rembold. Just for the public, we have miscellaneous expenditure, $113,000 to cover an unscheduled FAA inspection-related penalty. So could we provide the public with some information on that, Mr. Rembold? I don't think Valerie wants to do that one. I could be
She
wrong.
could give it a swing, but we'll take care of that. Yeah, thank you. This is, again, enterprise funds, so no, this is all airport revenue, this being moved, not taxpayer funds, just want to say that up front. Back in the summer of 2022, we had our annual FAA inspection. And that year, there was a bit of a change in the FAA's focus on their inspections. But a couple of the items that we addressed immediately following that inspection that were brought up as discrepancies were some of the training records and the way training records were maintained at the airport. We had previously kept paper folders on all of the folks who had to have annual training, and actually a few years before this inspection, it had actually been highlighted as a model way to keep the records. And then a few years later, we got hit as a discrepancy by the FAA inspectors. So that was one of the items that was found as a discrepancy. And what we did to fix that was started a new electronic tracking system that we deal with internally, but we also purchased software that enable us to keep up with the daily inspections and to generate work orders and that sort of thing. And then all of those items that are reported are maintained electronically, so we have a record-keeping system. So we've taken care of that. And then we also found out, and this was very instructive to us, but it was still a discrepancy, that we had actually written our own manual too restrictively. And that sounds silly, but it can happen. So we had a historic version of what's called the Airport Certification Manual. That's basically our version of the FAA's laws for the airport. And each airport has our own local version of that because the overall is called Part 139, can't apply to every airport the same way because they're all different. So our local code was actually more restrictive than it should have been. And we had a couple of areas within that code where we actually, while we still completed training, we didn't do it exactly as we said we'd do. And an example of that is our aircraft rescue firefighting folks have to go at least one time a year to have live fire burning training, different aspects of firefighter training. And that training was accomplished, however, it wasn't always accomplished at the place that we had said it would be accomplished at. So it was all done, no training was sacrificed, but we didn't follow the letter of our law. So our language has now been rewritten over 2 years ago, and we've expanded our options as to, if because that was a product of COVID, there weren't seats available at the South Carolina Fire Academy, so we couldn't go there. So we used other means to get that training done, but it was still marked as a discrepancy. So we had a couple items like that, mostly administrative, but we've corrected all of those. And the result of all that investigation was literally 18 months after that inspection, we found out from the FAA that they were going to pursue that penalty. So it was reduced after months of back and forth and information trading. It was reduced, but that's what the final number came to be.
I guess I'm just surprised FAA didn't say, congratulations on fixing it, go forth, and not have put a fine.
You're not the only one.
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Altoff? Nope, see, thank you very much for being here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
fellow
Thomas.
committee
Thomas,
members.
thank you for coming.
Do apologize, we just had a little miscommunication. I didn't get this report for your packets in time, but I really want your feedback on what you want to see. But just to give you an update on what's been going on in the purchasing department, as you can see on the slide there, we continue to conduct training on the new code. We finished up with all the department employees and department heads and ACAs for the actual department code itself. Now we're moving into updating the new procurement manual that is going to be like the how-to-do manual that supports the code. We'll continue to work on that. I hope to have it done in November to bring to you before December. And we finished the P-card manual update, and that's under review by legal right now. So hopefully we'll have that to bring back at the same time as we bring the new purchasing manual. So continue to do training. We also are working towards updating the training for OpenGov. The OpenGov is our new electronic system for solicitations. That's going well with staff. We've moved on to the second module, which basically captures all our contracts. It's a really neat system that captures when they're due. If anybody in the staff wants to find out when their contract is going to be over, get a copy of the contract, we can use that module to do that. So that's where we're at as far as training for our manuals and our new software. As far as solicitations, if you can go to the solicitation report. Give her a second. There we go. You're probably going to have to expand those. Just to give you a bottom line, just a summary, we've got around 27 solicitations out on the street, which is advertised on our website and the local paper and Skibo. If I go down, let me match this as well. We've basically got 2 in draft, so we've been very busy. I mean, thank you council for letting me hire, and Mr. Moore and John Robinson hired 2 additional people because we've really been putting out a lot of solicitations with the help of engineering and capital projects. Very thankful for that. But as you see, we've got 7 advertised, 7 waiting evaluation and finalization, 4 that have been awarded, and 6 that have been canceled. Now, if you say, you might ask me why have 6 been canceled? Well, a lot of those, we found out that we could do them cheaper in-house, or the project just wasn't awarded at the time because we decided we were going to do something else. So with that said, that's just a review of what we got out on the street, and you can go on yourself. Anybody in the public can go on OpenGov and look at these, and they'll see what we've advertised and the current status. Next thing I'd like to present is the...
Mr. Thomas, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Going back to that list, the Shell Point shelf maintenance for storm, I'm assuming that's for stormwater. Was that canceled because they're gonna do it in-house, or do you know?
Which one is that, ma'am?
The last one, Shell Point maintenance, shelf clearing.
Yes, that was canceled. It's decided, the department decided they didn't want to do it that time. It was going to be rebid.
Okay.
Possibility to be rebid.
Okay, thank you.
And the last report I wanted to show you is the purchase order report. It's huge. There's like 465 purchase orders on there. I think Mr. Robinson had kind of went through that report before. A lot of these are, all of the purchase orders are done under our current threshold and new code requirements where it's over $5,000. And this report only pertains to everything that's over $5,000. So it's either going to have a quotes attached to them, or they'll have a solicitation attached to the document. And you can't really see this in this report, but I can provide you later on as we get down into the weeds where if it's in blue, we can click on it and actually show you the actual contract file. Because that was one of the comments on the audit that we went through, that we weren't able to show them where our documentation was kept. I know that's a lot of POs to talk about, but all those purchase orders were done with competition, or if they weren't done with competition, a correct non-competitive form was reviewed by myself and my staff, or if it was over $50,000. It was reviewed by myself and my staff and the county administrator. So does anybody have any questions about this long laundry list of purchase
I'd like to
orders?
ask one. I'm always a little suspicious when I see the order amount is $49,999.99, 1 penny under the threshold.
That's correct. Well, we look at those to make sure that it is done appropriately. And if they do any change orders, they've got to justify, to make the cost go up over that $49.99, we make sure they do it properly then, and it's within reason.
Because these are all blanket POs for that amount.
Some of them are, yes, ma'am,
It's just a fun number.
it is.
Any other questions, Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a
Yeah.
question. Not regarding this right here, but you mentioned you're putting forward a new P-card manual.
Yes, sir.
I may be jumping the gun here, but I've talked to several employees in the county that are too afraid to use the P-card for internal purchases such as snacks and, things for their staff.
Yes, sir.
Which is a legitimate purchase,
It
but
is.
is that P-card manual gonna address that?
And the old P-card manual addressed that, it's just some people weren't following the procedures. And we work really well with our county administrator to make sure that he reviews purchases for food, to make sure it is the right kind of food purchase for the right kind of event. So there's, it's being vetted properly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr.
No,
Thomas?
just quickly, that information will be sent to us,
Which
which you
information?
just shared a few minutes ago.
We can, yes, sir. We can send it. It's
Appreciate that.
it's in your county administrator's packet, and it'll
Okay.
be in his, I guess, bi-weekly report.
It's already, they have
It's already there? Okay. Good question.
Okay.
I guess it's been sent to us already, is that Mr. Robinson? Okay, good. Nope? We'll get it.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
So the two reports in a different version.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Smaller version of those.
Yes, sir.
The solicitation report and the purchases over $5,000, both of those are included in your biweekly report. They're at the end of that report. As well as some of the information that Dave covered for you is also in your biweekly report. I think I saw it went out this morning.
It did.
Yep, so it's there. All right. So now, I've got the opportunity in the past few months, every one of our finance committees, we've had a finance report or finance update for you. The last, I think we did in July, we went through each fund. Christine came up and talked about each one of the funds that we have. Not a lot has changed of those funds in the last few months, but we'll do a full update of all those funds next month, because there will be some change for you to see. So today, I'm gonna talk to you about one fund in particular, our general fund fund balance. So our general fund balance is essentially accumulation of operating budget surplus. This sometimes is surplus from over several years that's carried over and is maintained in this specific fund. And there's an ordinance and some GFOA, and I'll talk about that rule that goes right along with that. All right. So as present, or at the closeout of our budget, our general fund balance was right about that $76 million number. The minimum balance, according to our ordinance, should be 46.5 million. There's a few finance organizations that have these recommendations. The Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, they're Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, GAPP. They recommend no less than 2 months of regular general fund operating revenue or expenditures as the best practice for a general fund balance. Beaufort County Ordinance, our Code of Ordinance, Section 2, which is finance, 403, establishes the general fund balance requirement. That was approved by council in 2014 by ordinance, 2014-06. Some of the tenets of that ordinance require that Beaufort County maintain a minimum of 30% of the total general fund expenditure of the previous year. So we take our total expenditures from the previous year, 30% of that number, and that's what we like to maintain in our general fund balance as a minimum. There's some other things in that ordinance as well. It talks about how we respond to and prepare for emergencies, specifically between the months of August to October, and how we maintain a little extra fund balance in that account just in preparation for natural disaster that may come our way. Any questions about that? No? Awesome.
I do.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Last time I remember, and I could be off, we talked about a range for our fund balance being at a minimum of 17% and up to 30 or 35%. But what you're saying here that our ordinance requires us to have a 30% fund balance?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is that ordinance that I mentioned. It's in our code of ordinance.
What percentage is that 76 now to our
So the
what should
minimum,
are you telling me that our fund balance minimum should be 46? That would be the 30%?
46.5 million is 30% of last year's expenditure. And that's the code that
That's
requires.
what it should be.
That's what it requires, yes, sir.
Yeah.
The minimum that it requires.
Minimum, maximum, I got you.
That's right.
Yeah, and 46 is a very healthy fund balance.
Yes, sir. So
So
healthy
76 is a-
depends.
Huh?
Healthy depends. Beaufort County, on average, throughout the year, we spend $13.8 million per month on operating costs. The months of July, August, and early September, our costs are a little lower, between $5 and $8 million per month, because all these contracts have to work their way through the budget. As we get further into the budget year, we'll see those expenses go up. So for Beaufort County, 30% is a very reasonable number. It exceeds GFOA recommendation of 2 months at 46
I got you.
46 million. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got your point, and you're doing a good job of justifying. My thing is that when I look at 76, and we spent down last year from our fund balance, we actually funded some projects
Yes,
from
sir.
the fund balance from last year.
Yes, sir.
And that's 76 is an increase over last year's fund balance.
Yes, sir, it is. The next
That's
slide,
a-
I'm going to talk about that increase, and we'll begin to talk about opportunities to use some of the some fund balance.
And my argument has always been that I think our citizens deserve a little break
Yes, sir.
on their taxes. And I'll leave it like that. Thank you, sir.
As we go forward, there are opportunities within the county to take care of some of the deferred actions, deferred maintenance on some of our buildings and some of our equipment and some of those types of things that are very important to the county. So we don't have to increase millage to maintain those things. So you're right on target, and I understand exactly what you're saying, which is one of the reasons I think it's really important that we discuss our general fund balance, and we have a practice of managing that fund balance to a reasonable place. And maybe I'll answer some more questions, because I see you have some more as we continue forward.
I've said it last year, I'll say it again.
Yes, sir. Last year's, so we'll talk about last year's fund balance. We had this discussion last year, and I believe you asked the same question then. And last year, our fund balance was at 62 million. We
Yeah.
ended that fiscal year at 61.3 million. So that's 61.3 million. Then the required fund balance of the previous year's expenditure was 32 million. So we had $61 million fund balance at the end of FY '23. That became the beginning balance of FY '24. And you see the closeout of FY '24, we increased the fund balance by $14.8 million from 2024 into 2025. And that's where we started this fiscal year with $76 million. So where did the $14 million come from? That's the good question I'd like to answer. Some examples of where we saved money. So this is some frugal operations that happened during 2024. If you remember back, there was a lot of things going on in 2024, and we were paying attention to every single dollar and every contract that Beaufort County awarded. Some significant savings, and I just put the highlights there. Significant savings was with our insurance. Beaufort County is self-insured. We budgeted for $12 million, and we had a great year. We only spent $8.9 million of that $12 million, saving $3.1 million. Our payroll contingency is this fund that was created that fiscal year to bring some of those vacant funding for vacant positions from departments back into the general fund so they could be used as necessary. We budgeted $4.1 million, and we only used $2 million of those funds over the year. So we again saved a number $2.1 million in the budget. And if I took the professional services and some miscellaneous expenses spread out across the county, those combined were about $8 million of expenses, and we saved $1.6 million there as just some examples of places that we save funds. Some other places that $14 million came from were income. When we estimate, or not estimate, but when we began to write the budget, we have to account for our expectations of, let's say one is interest on investments. In the 2024 budget, the investment income was estimated to be right about $600,000. We had a great year on investments, and we earned $4.9 million in investment dollars. That's a $4.2 million surplus in that line item. So when we take, another one is licenses and fees. We estimated we would receive $2.2 million. We received $3.2 million, another surplus of $1.2 million. So those funds end up back in the general fund account. They offset one another. Expenses versus revenue offset each other throughout the budget. But again, I wanted you to be aware that the balance was that we invested another $14 million in our general fund balance to get us to that $76 million account.
Good.
Yes, sir.
John, sorry to interrupt you real quick.
No, you're good.
I know at our strategic planning back in January, we had talked about retiree benefits at one point and
We
what that
did.
may look like. I saw the insurance, which is why I figured it might be a good time to ask about that.
Well, where did I put insurance? There it is.
That was just an
Yes.
example on the next slide.
We have continued to explore opportunities for that. We worked along with our provider through HR to see what kind of opportunities there are. It's very complex. There's a history when it
Yeah,
comes
I understand
to that. There is some opportunity for an employee-funded type of program that would be more appropriate. We haven't gotten off the ground with that much.
Okay.
But this is that insurance, where it went now. But that insurance is our county-funded, self-insured insurance. So we had a good year. We had a very good year.
Mr. Dawson?
Yeah, John,
Yes,
if
sir.
you would back up to the slide where you were showing the savings.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
You talk about the payroll contingency and how we save.
Yes, sir.
In that category because of the vacant positions. Are we still operating with those positions vacant, or do we have any intentions of filling them?
Yes, sir. So this one is a difficult one to say savings, because the intent is to fill those positions. The payroll contingency accounts for, if we were to fill 100% of the vacancies, then we would be able to fund those positions. So these are, they represent unfilled positions for Beaufort County. So we did a number. I don't have the number of employees that we hired last year or those vacancies with me, but I can get that information for you if you'd like.
Okay.
Again, we are operating the same and similar in payroll contingencies this year. Our number increased because our salaries and cost of living had increased. So this year, our payroll contingency, I think it's 4.5 million that we have for those positions. So hopefully, we will fill some of those positions and use some of those funds as they were designed. Honestly, at the end of the year, we'll likely have some surplus funds from that account unless we get to 100% of staffed.
Thank you, John.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, and this last is just a chart I put together for you so you could kind of see what it looks like over time from 2019 to 2024. The information is can go back as far as I can dig in Munis. But you'll see the bottom line is our expenditures. So when you look at the expenditure and the bottom line for 2019, the fund balance is in red and the 30% required of fund balance is above that. So for each of the previous years, you'll see that we have had an excess in fund balance, a small excess in fund balance over what is required. And you'll see the separation in this year is because we underspent last year, and this year's 30% is based on last year. So it looks like a gap that you see. Just the way the numbers come out in accordance with the ordinance. So like I said, I wanted to take a shallow dive into that topic. It is, fund balance can be kind of complicated, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of our position, our current fund balance. So as of the beginning of the budget year was that $76 million number. There will be hopefully some opportunity that will come forward, presented to either this committee or other committees for opportunities for use of those funds. Mr. Bartholomew, you mentioned some funding for our boat ramps and boat landings. We have A&H tax dollars this year that for county-funded projects, that boat ramps and beach renourishment, those types of projects are specifically called out in A&H tax dollars. And so we have some funds for that. And hopefully before next month, Bryson, who is not only our state A-tax, but also our local A-tax, I don't know, chief wrangler of us. She helps manage that program for us. So hopefully for the next finance committee, we'll bring forward a list of those A&H tax qualified projects to talk with committee about and help prioritize those projects as we come forward, capturing those that from the past as well. We'll bring those forward and prioritize those projects and see the best way of use of those dollars, if that's helpful. Any questions?
You said the fees and license fees were higher than what was
Yes, ma'am.
anticipated. Any knowledge of why? Is it?
Well, not particularly, but I would say that is a sign of a healthy economy. As business licenses and permits and those types of things, when we see an increase in that, I think that is a reflection of a healthy environment. New businesses or sometimes business license is based on the projection of profit for a company. So if they're seeing more profit, we're seeing business license, either the number of businesses increase or the profit margin of the businesses increase. So I think that's an indicator of a healthy economy for Beaufort County.
Good, and let me just add to what Mr. Glover was talking about with our fund balance. I mean, obviously, when we have no emergencies, hurricanes, we look at our fund balance, think, oh, we have too much money. But I can promise you, if we had a hurricane, if we had a Michael, a Milton, a Matthew, a Helene, or God forbid, a Hugo or a Katrina, we would not have enough money and would be looked at like, why didn't you have more? So it is a slippery slope for us. And that fund balance is vital if there is a emergency. However, we also look at it as why aren't we using that money then for our constituents? So
Yes, sir, you're 100% right. Hurricane Matthew, Beaufort County initially spent over $20 million just for recovery. And much of that was reimbursed later by FEMA, but we cover that bill up front.
And it came out the fund balance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There you go.
That's why it's Beaufort County. We're in a unique position. We do have a healthy economy, and we can retain some of those
And the
funds.
fund balance was not that high.
Then, well, that was, what was Matthew? That was 6 years ago, 2018?
2016.
Yeah,
Fund balance is around 30 million. I remember it.
it could be. Yeah, I don't have the number. That was 2018. I can look it up for you.
That was a category one.
Yes, sir.
Just a category one.
All right, Mr. Robinson, thank you for coming.
You're
Anyone
welcome.
else have any questions for Mr. Robinson? Nope. All right, thank you very much. Let's move on. We need to be finished by 5 o'clock sharp for our council meeting, so we're not gonna rush anything, but we just need to keep moving here. So let's go to our agenda items, and then number 8, recommend approval to council of an ordinance appropriating funds from the state A-tax funds as recommended by the State A-tax Committee in compliance with the requirements of South Carolina Code of Laws. And Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Jonathan Sullivan, who's our chairman of our A-tax Committee. Thank you for coming. We appreciate all you do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. No, I do have a copy. Oh, sure, that'd be great.
Could you introduce any of your members that are here from the committee?
Just ask him the type of topic to talk about, that we have a motion in a second, so if it's on the floor, you can have discussion, you can ask questions during his presentation.
All right, so you're asking us to do a motion for discussion or a motion?
Motion for approval for what's before you, that puts it on the floor, then you can discuss it and ask questions as you go along.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Thank you, Mr. Glover. All right, is there any discussion with that? So let's go ahead
We're gonna hear it.
with our
That's great.
discussion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Tab, thanks for pointing that out. Mr. Stewart's behind me. He's been on A-tax committee for, 4+ years. Anita Prather, you might know her as Aunt Pearlie Sue. She's also been on the committee probably 5 or 6 years. I know 7 or 8 years. So two great committee members. And I, not on the committee, but I do want to point out Christine Webb, who is dynamite, and certainly Bryson Campbell, who I know wears many hats on the finance team, but I will tell you, this process would not be as clean and run as well as it has this last year without Bryson. She is an absolute rock star, so if someone comes up here and says they're putting her in a different role, that's fine, but she has to have a dotted line to this process, even if you got to pay her, something else. I know we presented to Finance Committee a few months back on some changes we were making. The application's gone virtual this year, so it actually matches the local H&A tax that Mr. Robinson was just speaking about. So this is, again, the state A tax, but now those processes are very similar in terms of the application. And we really focused heavily on the budgets. So we want to see the organizational budget, and then we wanted to see a specific detail of the revenues and expenses of the event or whatever they're proposing as part of the application process. Tourism generation, as the state requires, we, again, focused heavily on 3 things. One of the second of those was, how do you track tourism and how many tourists do you anticipate creating? If it's a new event, historically, how has that worked out? If you've asked for funds before, this is an ongoing activity or event. And lastly, if you have a marketing plan, you're asking for marketing funds, we also wanted a detailed breakdown of how those funds would be spent. And so we really focused heavily on those parts of the application as we brought applications in this year, so we can get specific information. So when I got to stand before you this year, I could give you really great detail on how that shook out. As it goes, we had a couple hiccups in the application process. While there was a required workshop, that was probably the greatest change this year for the applicant's perspective. Everybody that applied did come to the workshop with the exception of one applicant who ended up going to the city of Beaufort. Their application was intended for them and just got submitted through our process, but they will actually probably come back in the future to the county request as well. The other change.
Say that again. Say that again.
For the workshop. So this year we had the workshop, and if you were going to apply for county A-tax, for the state A-tax, we asked all applicants to come to the workshop so that we could go over how the budget would work, the P&L, what we needed.
Gotcha.
So what we often get, that's a great question. The real reason for the workshop was we wanted everyone to understand, if you're going to apply for these funds, how the committee looks at it. We didn't want there to be some, the question of what's your secret sauce? How do you look at this? Is it a low time of year? How many tourists do you generate? Is it a busy time of year? And if it's busy, then why are we going to fund it if there's already tourists here? So I want to stand up here and our committee wants to make recommendations that are going to give the best return on investment. And so we wanted the applicants to understand what is that return, how do we measure it, and how do we look at it. So there wasn't any secret, there's no changing of the rules or how it worked. We wanted to make it an easy application process for the applicants. Because it's a long application to get through. So great question. So with that, we did have a couple of organizations who struggled to get the P&Ls put together. You'll see that reflected in our recommendations. And so we really tried to hone on and be true to the workshop. We've asked for specific information from all the applicants. And if we didn't get it, then that's the recommendations that we've provided. And I tried to include that into the narrative, and I apologize, I didn't get that. I think everybody got the copy of the draft. But I've asked the committee to review the narrative so that before we make it finalized, so it goes into the actual record, so I can make sure there's no changes or modifications to the way I captured our meeting narrative. I'm happy to read those comments to you. I'm sure you, from a timing perspective, are not interested in hearing that dialogue, but I'm happy to go through them one at a time or whichever way you see fit.
Everyone received a printed copy of your draft, Jonathan.
Yeah,
Oh, perfect, okay.
I don't need to, but I would like to ask the question when I get a chance.
But before, I will say, I have a number here. So this year we had $1.3 million to make recommendations against as part of the 2% collection. The recommendations, if you add it all up, the net difference is about $537,000, almost 538,000. What the committee is recommending is we want to have a second cycle this year, so we would open applications back up going in through December, and then we would hear a second cycle of these funds. The funds have already been approved through Finance Committee, so the funds are there. But since we have such a surplus of funds available, then we can allow applicants to come back and make a second request for their event or activity. And then we could hear them likely in January, and then we could come back to you with those recommendations probably in February.
I have a question. So open it back up again.
Yes, ma'am.
New applicants could come in at that time too?
Absolutely. And so our thought is, again, the workshop was critical. Since this is the same year, same cycle, nothing's changed. If you've already participated in the workshop, you don't need to come again for the cycle. Mm-hmm. But if you haven't participated, then we are going to have another workshop date. So new applicants who haven't requested could come in to that workshop and then put an application in.
When would you anticipate that workshop?
We are looking at the week of November 18th through the 22nd is the tentative dates we have.
And when would the application process start?
Well, we would go ahead, technically, the application's online now, so you
Right.
could submit. But, so if you've already been to a workshop, you know, if Finance Committee's in support of this, I mean, technically, they could submit an application tonight, right?
Right.
But if they haven't participated, they need to come to the workshop, and then they could submit an application after that workshop date
Sure.
in late November.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask?
Yep, go ahead.
Ms. Howell, you finished?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I appreciate, quickly, since the new ordinance started, how do things go?
It was, honestly, it was great. I mean, from an application perspective, we had a great meeting. The committee met, and we did a full review of all the changes that we knew we would see. And really, I shouldn't say changes, expectations that we had for what we want to see from the applicant so that we could make the best recommendations and what a return on investment really looks like. One big change that over the last few years, we try to understand where do our A-tax funds come from unincorporated Beaufort County. And so a big shift this year is we learned that roughly 78% come from the northern portion of the county. So knowing that, and you see the growth and collection from, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago when I was up here serving this committee, we were right at $500,000. Now we're at 1.3. So our goal as a committee is how do we really get a good return on investment for us? That's a very good measure that these funds, if we put them back where the funds come from, it seems like a great opportunity to continue to follow that method.
Good. Help me understand the Greater Beaufort Port Royal CVB requesting one figure and receiving much more.
Oh, great, yeah. So the first they had was an application for $195,000. Let me go to my larger printed copy. Their first request was for $195,000, and they are the only DMO for Beaufort County that applied for funds. The southern portion of the county did not apply. One other DMO did apply, but that's the scatter region. So Peach Morrison runs South Carolina Tourism Coalition, which represents multi-county, but she is also a state DMO. The Northern Beaufort County, we recommend full funding for their $195,000.
Right.
And one thing that we heard from them, a few keynotes. One is for every dollar they put in the marketplace, there's an estimated $11 return on investment. That's probably the best return on investment that we heard from through the application process. Probably the best return on investment you're going to hear from anybody. The other piece is the cost of advertising during election cycle. So they're competing, so you're trying to buy ads with everybody who wants to campaign, and they're buying TV, radio, print, so all the cost of advertising has also increased. And the third dialogue we had in our discussion was, as you see, there's a fair number of applicants who did not get funded or had reduced funding. So we set aside an additional pot of $75,000 so that they could support those organizations and they could work directly with the CVB to go get those funds. Because here's what we know. We know that if we get these applications, if you're in agreement, we reopen application cycle. By the time we come back and make additional recommendations and go through the multi-readings, it's probably going to be April before the funds get distributed again. So this $75,000 gives the CVB the ability to fund those organizations that might need help without going through this process. They also did lose a portion of their funding this past year with the change to the H&A tax local ordinance of $150,000. So this helps offset that. So we didn't want an organization who might have a really good plan not be able to execute against that if they didn't have the ability to market. So we thought this $75,000 could help the CVB work with those other organizations to market their events or activities.
Okay. The other question, your Mid-City Youth Sports Association, you redline, and then the Black Chamber, you redline.
Why?
Okay.
Sure. Is that the question?
That's a good question.
That's the question.
Stop with
So,
that.
yeah, so the Black Chamber, so they did not attend our workshop. Their application was meant for the city of Beaufort, which Bryson caught. She actually got that to the city of Beaufort, so they're presenting to the city of Beaufort this week. They have their ATAX presentations. So they just submitted their application to the wrong ATAX pot. Now, had they have come to our workshop, we would have heard their application, but unfortunately, they didn't attend, and it was intended for a different ATAX request. The inaugural smoke, they actually did not show up for application day, so for their presentation portion. So they've already reached out to finance team, and we've told them we're likely going to reopen, and so they'll reapply and come back for a second round of funding request.
So both groups will be able to come back in November?
Let me answer that question. The answer is yes. Mid-Cities Youth did come to the workshop, so they could reapply technically again. Well, we already have their application, so we can move it forward. They've already told us they do. The Black Chamber would have to come to the workshop since they haven't been yet, and then, yes, they would be eligible to apply.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And the last question is, did notice go out to previous participants? Okay.
They do, yes. Great question. So what finance team does is everyone who's applied, I want to say they went back 3 or 4 years, they have a email distribution list. And so we emailed all the applicants, and we also put out public notice. So I think we put in the administrators' weekly notes, and I know that we actually the county bought ads in the local paper to put that out for public notice.
And one of the very, very popular activity on St. Helena is the Penn Center Heritage Day celebration, and they didn't.
They did not apply.
Okay.
And they didn't. One of their board members is on the committee, in fact, and they were equally as surprised. So
Okay.
they may apply in the second cycle, or they also might reach out to the CVB, provided they get some additional funding. So that's a great example of how that additional $75,000 could be
Sure.
used. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And real quick, Brian, if you can just start thinking about, we're going to open this back up again. It's already covered by money. Do we need to do anything with an amendment to our approval of this to open things back up again and give money away again? Because it's not how we have things stated. So again, think about it right now. Ms. Brown has some questions.
Quick.
And then, like I said, just let us know at the end here what we've got to do to make sure we are covering all bases on this. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Number 28, Low Country Golf Course Owners Association, $7,000.
Yes, ma'am.
I just looked them up online. They're permanently closed. Are you aware of that?
We looked them up online that Friday. They were not permanently closed then,
Right now.
so that's interesting. And it's the one that advertises,
Low Country Golf Course Owners Association, permanently
We
closed.
looked it up while they were talking about it.
yeah, we actually went on their website and looked it up during discussion.
Look at this. Oh, I hit a button. Oh, anyway, that's what I'm seeing online.
You can send a check to me.
I do not have that authority, but I'll certainly make the recommendation.
Just
Quick question.
wanna wrap it up.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Right
Sullivan,
here.
this is your first round of funding for the applicants.
Yes, sir.
Those who then, who weren't
I think we should.
successful in the first round, they get a chance to come back and apply in the second round, right?
Unless they're talking about. the
I mean,
events.
technically, absolutely. So if they come back with either additional events or they, let's say, for example, they come back and they say, hey, we decided we have so much interest, we want to add a day and we want some additional funds to add a day onto our event or activity or make it bigger, sure. I mean, technically, sure, why not?
All right. To follow up on that, then those who were funded in the first round, do they get a second bite at the apple in the second round also?
You mean if they were not awarded funds?
No. If they were awarded in this first round, do they get to come back on the second round and apply for additional funds?
Sure.
Wow.
I mean, we have some organizations who apply for multiple activities. So we have, I mean, if you go through the applicants, I mean, there are some organizations on here who do multiple activities throughout the year. So what we did do this year, historically, organizations might do multiple events and they would put it on one application. So we asked them specifically to break it out to individual applications. That way we can make a recommendation based on the financial success of those individual events.
Okay.
So it makes it easier for us as a committee to make a recommendation to council.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Deborah, go ahead.
So, I just want to comment and thank the members of the committee that are here and those that aren't. These people were here from 8:30 until 5:45. I
think
think
so.
we took 20 minutes for lunch.
We did, and we had a few bathroom breaks in between.
Yeah, a few bathrooms, but they really, really went through what was required to meet the standard. And Mr. Hulbert was there to make sure we, adhered to the state code. And then they all voted. And when you look at the written part that we provided you, you'll see an explanation as to why something was not funded or not funded to the full extent. And do you want to talk about the change in how they get their money this year?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And actually, Mr. Lawson, you mentioned Brian, and I don't want to skip over Brian. Brian was with us the entire
The
day
whole
as
day.
well, and he was fantastic. To Councilwoman Tabb's comments, I mean, he really, there's times where you have a break, and so having Brian there was really, it was incredibly helpful, so I don't want to skip over him. He just doesn't hold my hand the way Bryson does. The last cycle, what we did is council said, hey, we'll do 50% distribution up front, and then you submit your receipts to support that distribution, and then you can request the additional 50% as a reimbursement program. That worked incredibly well, because our struggle as a committee is we don't always get great data on the back end. We get sometimes, you feel like you're looking at the back of a napkin kind of report. This really required some very real data to be provided, and so that was incredibly helpful for us. We did have one organization send a check back to the county for $9,000 roughly, because their event ended up being less to produce than they had budgeted, and so they wrote their check back to the county for $9,000 and said they didn't need their remainder fund balance. And so this has really changed the way this committee can now function, because now there's some real teeth, and that we want you to prove to us that you use the funds you said the way you would, and that it also generated tourism impact in a healthy way. And so that has been a really significant change, and that's been incredibly helpful. Probably a little bit more work for the finance team on staff, but ultimately it's certainly a better way for the committee to manage these funds and make better recommendations to you.
And I'm sure everyone didn't have a chance to read all these, but it goes to council we'll recommend, if we recommend, and then it'll be a full discussion there as well. But if you have any questions, Jonathan can certainly answer.
All right, good. Any other questions? Mr. Sullivan, thank you. And again, this is my 6th year on council. I can tell you when I first got here, things were done a lot differently than what we're doing now. So I want to commend this committee and our council for making things transparent, moving things forward, opening things up, having good people like Mr. Sullivan and your committee that's going to help out. And of course, our staff, Ms. Webb, Ms. Campbell, and Brian, thank you again for all your input. And I know, Tab, you've had a big part of this, so again.
I worked with him.
Yes, you've done a great job on this, so thank you so much.
Well, we had a full complement for your committee too, so we're up on
Absolutely.
that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Great
Mr. Sullivan.
job.
And just to address your comments, so you recall when we adopted the amendment to the ordinance, we allowed for them to have, they have to report at least one time. We left it open where they could have as many meetings as they thought was appropriate.
Okay, all right, good. So, what are we are then, moving this to council, what's been recommended? So haven't had a, well, I think we need to find out whether that's actually true or not. I think that before we become presumptive.
Oh,
that
it's
they're-
just on, I just looked it up on.
I mean, so the question is, Brian, if for some reason the Low Country Golf Course Association has gone under?
Okay, no information that, Brittany just looked online, they're active online. He was here talking about how many golf courses they represented.
Yeah.
He was very active in his presentation.
Okay, so we just need to double check that before our first,
Maybe they mean permanently closed, the office is closed on Corp
That's
Christi,
not true.
not the association.
so we go to first reading, we'll have an answer for
Okay.
that. I think that's the best.
I
thing.
have a feeling it's their office.
Their office is closed?
Yeah,
Okay.
Corpus Christi.
All right.
Hilton Head.
Yes, Mr.
General.
Sullivan.
If I could, since I'm up here to recommend, I would recommend moving it forward. And the reason I say that, and I feel confident in saying that, is what Bryson does is she uses our narrative as you move this forward to make it part of the requirements. And she will check before she makes those distribution cuts. So that's, I think, but what I don't want to do is slow this down. A lot of applicants asked about the timing of funds and how it's going to impact their budget and their events, because some of them are pending. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan. So we do have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. Any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will pass this without objection. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, this will move then to council.
Thank you.
Let's move on then to number 9, and this is a recommend approval to council of an ordinance amending budget ordinance 2024 and 2025 to reflect the approval of use of general fund balance for $3,200,000 for fleet services vehicle and equipment purchases, and then $4,303,000 for Beaufort Executive Airport hangar construction, and waive $712,750.52 the Beaufort Executive Airport payable loan to the general fund. If I could have someone make a motion, and I probably want to ask someone to make a motion to, what's the correct word, bifurcate this, to make it into 2 different items. Is that something that, I think that's important for us to do, not handle this as one motion forward?
Mr. Hulbert looks confused.
So you wanted to take this agenda item and deal with each one individually, is what you want to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then, I would ask that you have a motion and second put on the floor for discussion, and then have a motion to bifurcate after that as part of the discussion. So you need to amend it, bifurcate, separate them out. That'd be the best way to do that.
Okay. So do I have a motion for this amendment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. And then now would ask for someone to make a amendment to separate them?
Yes, you could whatever language you want to separate the item that you want, and you've got the, you can deal with project 1 as this one here, and then to separate out project 2 from project 1, if that's what the committee's pleasure is.
I think that's,
And we should make clear, if you wanna do it going forth to council, at least the council as well, to make it permanent, where it's
think that would be our recommendation. Is someone who would like to make that amendment?
But we don't wanna send it to council yet, we wanna postpone.
Well, we still need to,
Yeah, okay, I'll make the motion to bifurcate, I like the word. Split it off into two, so one would be the use of general fund balance of $3,200,000 for fleet services, vehicle and equipment purchases.
That'd be 9A.
What?
We do 9A, 9B.
Yeah, that, we could call that 9A, thank you, Mr. Bartholomew.
project one, yes.
And the second project would be $4,303,000 for Beaufort Executive Airport hangar construction. And I still have an issue with the wave.
So you wanna make that three?
It could be a third one. Third, waive $712,750 Beaufort Executive Airport payable loan.
Well, then, if you're gonna bifurcate project one and two, I'd recommend you have that discussion during the discussion of project two. And if you want to
Split
amend
it
that,
again.
and take that out, then you would not approve that portion of it, so you amend that aspect of it.
Okay. So we split the two, the general fund fleet services and the Beaufort Airport hangar.
And just be clear, is it for discussion purposes or for going forth permanently? Which you have to make-
I'm putting it forth for discussion purposes.
So you wanna discuss each of them separately, that's,
Yeah.
then you can decide what to do, let's do that.
Okay, all right, good. So we have a second, a first and a second. Any more discussion? Let's go ahead and open this up then. And that's approved, right? We had, that, the bifurcating has now been approved, so we're gonna talk about for discussion.
We're gonna discuss.
Project.
One, 3.2 million. first.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, all right.
got that? Everyone keep clear?
Yeah, I got it.
Mr. Robinson, thank you for coming up again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. So, with me today is Todd Davis, our Fleet Services Manager. I will be going through the ordinance request. So this ordinance requests a amendment to our budget ordinance requesting your approval of $3.2 million to be transferred from general fund balance for fleet services for the purposes of purchasing vehicles. So I'm gonna go through the finance part of this and how we got where we are. And if there's any specific questions about vehicles or the intended use of those funds, Todd is here to answer those, because he knows about our vehicles, equipment, and trucks and cars and those kinds of things, and I'll talk with you about the numbers. So essentially, in our 2024 budget, we had funding, which was $3 million, or $3 million was inside the capital improvement fund that would have supported the purchase or lease of vehicles. The funding source inside of the capital fund was bond revenue. This was the 2025 bond revenue that is going forward to council at second reading. So once we began to figure out the funding source for that, we did not feel like this was the most fiscally responsible way to proceed. We removed that funding from the original $90 million bond that came forward. Now you have a $70 million bond coming forward, and we need to find the proper funding source for the $3.2 million request of vehicles. That's why we're here asking for you to consider using fund balance to make up that difference. So we came forward with three options. One of those, the first option, which is in the ordinance. Now, of course, we put that in the ordinance, so we had something coming forward, but whatever you choose to move forward, we'll amend that ordinance according to your direction. So option one is requesting $3.2 million from general fund balance for the purpose of purchase of the 36 vehicles required. Option two is a combination of opportunities. It requests $2.7 million from the general fund to lease 9 specialized vehicles, and the cost of the specialized vehicles is almost $500,000 per year. Well, for the first year, I'm sorry, $498,000. And the purchase of the balance of the rest of the vehicles, 27 vehicles. And the reason that Todd chose those 9 specialized vehicles is because they are likely to be replaced within that 5-year, during that 5-year lease period. So these are specialized vehicles that have lift gates and things like that that fail at a frequency, and those might be those vehicles that we would want to replace on a higher periodicity. So they make sense for a lease. And option 3 is another option, is a creative option for us, and that requests the use of $1.8 million from general fund and the transfer of $933,000 from facilities maintenance capital equipment. So inside the budget this year, there was appropriated funds for capital equipment in facilities. After a meeting with the facilities folks, while they don't prefer this option, we do have the option to defer some of the equipment that they were going to purchase, repurpose that $933,000 into fleet vehicles, and use the additional $1.8 million from fund balance to make up the difference. Coming into FY '26, we would then have to purchase some of those deferred vehicles. So those were the 3 options that we had to make up this difference. Any questions or discussion about that, or any questions about the list of vehicles? You'll see that, yes, sir.
These are vehicles to replace current vehicles, or these are new vehicles to be used, or?
No, sir. In the backup material, most of them are replacements. So in option 1, in the backup material under project 1, the second page under there is this list of 36 vehicles. The asset, the 4th column over, or 5th column over, describes the asset that's being replaced. For instance, line 1 is an ambulance. It's $383,000, and it lists the ambulance that is being replaced. So this new ambulance would replace a 2016 Ram ambulance that has 232,000 miles on it. So, and there may be one new piece of equipment that I read in the list.
I think it's in Passive Park.
Oh, here it is. A new addition to fleet. There may be one in Passive Park. Here's a new addition, is a DSN passenger van. But for the most part, they are replacements, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, good.
John,
Yes, sir.
what's the lead time on the ambulance again? I know it's a long.
For these,
Yeah, well, just for the EMS ambulance, because isn't it?
18 months? Todd says 18 months.
18 months.
18.
You can come up here, Todd. They're gonna get you next.
So
I need
just
a-
know-
I need
know
them
there's
close.
a lead period on that.
Yes, sir. Honestly, it depends on the, when it goes out for bid, the manufacturers that come up, the different additions to those that are there. And it has gotten a little bit better, but still emergency vehicles are difficult to come by.
So we got a 12-year-old ambulance that we may have to put another 2 years worth of miles on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And they have, we did get a few ambulances in service last year.
Yeah, I know you-
Some of these services, Todd's crew takes really good care of them. Some advantage that we've had over the past few years is now our fleet service maintenance is done in-house by our staff. So we have the opportunity to put our eyes on our vehicles, determine what we should fix, what we can fix, how we can increase longevity of these vehicles over time, or when it's time to stop spending money on things that we can't fix reasonably anymore. That's that law of diminishing returns.
And I know, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Good.
I know that most of these things will go to auction, the older equipment.
Yes, sir.
Do they generate anything really?
So if you look at, in Dave's report, so when Dave Thomas was up at the end of his report, he talked, he mentioned in that report those sales of vehicles. So those numbers were there in your
Okay.
biweekly
I'll go
report.
back and check it out.
But yes, sir, we do.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
36 vehicle represent all of our vehicles? 10% of our vehicles?
A fraction, Todd?
I'm sure not.
It's 1,283. That's how many rolling assets you have.
1,200,
83.
that's how many vehicles we have.
Yes.
So
rolling
this is
assets.
roughly about 25%.
Oh,
No, less than that.
That's
No,
about
John,
Yeah.
1.2%.
Okay. Is there no Is this part of the replacement of these vehicles cycle, or do we have a cycle for
Yes, we do.
replacing?
We do have a replacement cycle.
We do?
Yes.
And this fits right into that
Yes.
budget process?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But you had it in the bonds.
That was a finance issue. So that didn't really have anything to do with fleet services. So fleet services put together a very comprehensive package, and he's got a really good capital replacement plan coming forward. The funding source for that was done in the budget in the finance department. So that's where, once we discovered this issue, this is our solution for that.
Got you.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So I see on the bottom, we have 2 bucket trucks. Didn't we approve to buy some of those earlier this year? Because I was laughing with Jared that I should drive it. Didn't we buy
Yes, we
bucket trucks?
did. So there's a few different departments. Todd, you want to answer that one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Yes, ma'am. There's 2 departments. We have bucket trucks, that's facility maintenance, and that's gonna be, traffic operations. Traffic operations has 4 employees, that currently roam throughout Beaufort County. And it's beneficial to have an extra, bucket truck on hand. Facility maintenance uses that bucket truck as well, so they're kind of sharing those two bucket trucks.
I mean, these trucks are very old.
They are, yes.
I mean, I wouldn't drive a car that's a 2008.
No. One of them, you can't even find a bucket no more for it. They
Yeah.
no longer make that style.
Okay.
So, question, Mr. Robinson, as we move forward, this is something, obviously, we found the error that was under the bond, revenue. But, moving forward, I mean, I was thinking that the vehicles would be in each department, so it's not in each department, this is separate, or whenever we budget a department, aren't the vehicles in that actual department in their budget as opposed to this being separate? And again, if this is going forward, are we gonna have to budget this amount for every year moving forward? The $3 million we're talking about for replacement, or is getting that in the department's budgets?
So what you're talking about is, a few years ago, the Fleet Services Department was an internal service fund. So when the Fleet Services was an internal service fund, each department would budget for their own vehicle replacement and their own vehicle maintenance. They would need to purchase a vehicle, so their department could purchase that vehicle, or they could go through Fleet Services to do that for them, but the funding source came from their department. This centralizes that program. This centralizes the cost of maintenance and purchasing inside one department. So at the beginning of each year, and we have already done this at one point, that this is part of capital improvement. So they come forward with their capital needs. They discuss those capital needs. They bring their capital needs to Fleet Services. Fleet Services looks at their capital needs, looks at the vehicle they have, the vehicle that they're asking to replace, identifies, they already know its needs at this point. So the department is convincing the Fleet Services manager that they need this vehicle for a specific purpose. So this puts another layer of responsibility throughout the loop to make sure that we're acting in the best interest of the community and not just purchasing vehicles because we want them, but purchasing vehicles that we need, that need to be replaced for a specific purpose. I don't know if that answered your question, but when we look in a specific department's line item, the vehicle purchase line item is 54400. I think I got that right. I'm looking at Valerie to make sure I got the number right. So in each department, that specific line item for vehicle purchases is there. And if you look at that for a department, it is 0, because the funds for that vehicle purchase are within Fleet Services Department. Was that helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, which vehicles will be leased?
Well, that depends on what you recommend to council. So in,
Well, in both
yes.
scenarios, 2 and 3, you got 9 vehicles being leased.
yes, in 2 and 3, there would be the
Right.
option for leased vehicles.
And you prefer leasing them or purchasing them?
No, sir. Staff prefers option 1, purchase them outright.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for purchasing outright is now that we have in-house staff, it is very likely that throughout the lifetime of these vehicles, staff can begin to predict their needs and their failure points and address those failure points, or trade them in earlier. If we enter into a lease agreement for vehicles, our options become less. If we own them outright, all the options are ours. Under option 2, the first list there of those 9 vehicles that are proposed, and most of these, like we said, were specialty vehicles. So there are transit vans, 2 transit vans for DSN, and both of these transit vans have the handicap lifts in the back.
Sure.
So the vans themselves are great, but those lifts begin to fail quickly, and we want to make sure we maintain them properly and that they're safe for operation. So those would be something that might be traded in more frequently than something else. There's an SUV type van with a wheelchair ramp inside of it, and a few Parks and Recs vehicles. 2 15-passenger vans, a 12-passenger bus, and a 12-passenger bus for prisoner transport. So these are all vehicles that are used daily, that see a lot of mileage and a lot of uses. So if we were going to lease vehicles, this is the recommendation from Fleet Services. But we still prefer option 1.
So option 1 is a straight-out purchase.
Yes, ma'am.
Of 36 vehicles.
Yes, ma'am.
Option 2, we would lease 9 vehicles
Yes,
and purchase 27.
yes.
Option 3, we're going to lease 9 vehicles and purchase 27.
We're going to purchase 27, but 2 funding sources. So half of the funding will come from that account I described, which was facilities maintenance equipment, and we will have to defer some of that equipment until next budget year. It is possible to do, it's not preferred, because we'll be deferring the purchase of other equipment. However, the fleet maintenance staff is assured of, they can rent what they need in between until we make them whole again in FY '26 budget. We tried to present you as best options as we could to make up for this error in funding.
All right, so what is the will of this committee? Is this, Brian, we now, we go into project number 2 discussion, or do we need to make a decision on project 1?
We should fully discuss this, and then we'll move on to project 2. You don't have to make a motion to approve it, just fully discuss to see which way you're leaning, so.
All right. Is there any discussion with regards to which way that this committee would like to move forward?
I mean, I don't have no
1,
problem.
2, or 3?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with approving, option 1. It's
There goes
coming out
your
of the
fund balance.
It's coming out of the fund balance.
There goes your fund balance.
You got plenty of money in the
But,
fund.
but I agree, if you're asking me, that would be what I think that is the correct thing to do. Any other?
One thing about the handicap vans, I have a personal friend who has one, and there's a lot of, those lifts have a lot of issues. I just wonder if it would be better to, lease those. I don't know, I mean, and it's just her personal experience with a 2-year-old van. I mean, they're so specialized.
I will say that if you do fully fund them, then that doesn't preclude Fleet Services from the option of leasing.
Of leasing them.
The options there is really about the dollar amount. Option 1 is, or option 2 is least expensive.
She wishes she had leased hers instead of buying, because of the issues. There's just not many manufacturers of those.
That's right, they're tough. Our
All right,
fleet
so-
guys do a
Just
good
a
job
personal-
keeping
just a
them going.
comment.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so can we move on now to project number 2?
Yes.
Yep, let's move on to project number 2.
All right.
Mr. Robinson.
Thanks, Todd. All right, we've got a whole contingent from our airports here. We have John here from the airport, Steve Perry. Did Ryan come with you? No, just y'all. Okay. So again, I'm going to go through project 1, talk to you about the options that were presented and any specific questions. John Rembold and his deputy Steve are here to answer your specific questions, because I'm not an airport guy. All right. So what's before you is a request for, let me find the ordinance. This one is $4,303,000. The request from staff is to fund this from general fund balance, as well as waive the Beaufort Executive Airport payable loan to the general fund in the amount of $712,750.52. So we'll talk about both of those. Do you want to talk about the existing payable loan first?
That would be good.
Okay.
I would prefer it if you.
Okay. So here's what I could find on the existing payable loan. So this is a loan from Beaufort County's fund balance to the Beaufort Executive Airport that dates as far back as 2002. This is an unstructured type of loan. And when I mean unstructured, there was no defined payback period and no defined payment amount. So this was from many, many years ago. Each year, the finance department gets a, we'll say, a gig on our, in our audit because of an unstructured loan from our fund balance here. So the history of this, no one in this, well, no one that I talked with, I won't say no one in this room, but no one I talked to was here at the point when this payable loan was generated. So what I understand is there was a runway safety project that began negotiation with the Army Corps of Engineers around 2002. There was a portion of that funding from the Army Corps of Engineers that Beaufort Executive Airport was required to pay. So they had a matching grant, more or less. The Airway Safety Project went on. It was funded and paid for through the Army Corps. Years later, when airport staff was doing a new project with the Army Corps came back to staff and said, hey, you really didn't pay your required portion from this 2002, so if you want this new grant, we need to cover that old grant. And that happened between 2013 and 2016, I think is the timing right? Somewhere in that time frame. So Beaufort Executive did not have, it is an enterprise fund, so it is a business of Beaufort County. They carry their own fund balance or cash balance. They did not have the funds at the time to make that appropriation, so they came to county council, and county council at that time loaned them the funds to make up that difference from the general fund balance. That, and I believe in that time period as well, some money as well for a hangar project. The balance of that, so we can find this in the finance department, we can follow this back to the earliest point in time in the Munis system that shows up just as a payable fund. So like I said, the balance of their payable account, essentially a debt to the fund balance, is that $712,750.52. The revenue, the current revenue of the Beaufort Executive Airport is thin. In order for them to cover their operating cost, maintenance, and capital cost, that has to be done first, and then they use any excess left over from their budget to pay back this loan. Last year, the payback to this loan was $10,000. This will take a long time to pay off, okay? Any questions about that, where that's from?
Any questions?
Have they been, I guess I'd ask Mr. Rembold, have they paid $10,000 a year on that loan?
Not every year, just last year. I don't know what last year's
It's
payments
the
were.
first year they paid on the loan?
No, ma'am.
And
They
maybe
pay on the
he
loan
doesn't
every
know
year.
either, yeah.
No, I'll be quite honest with you. We researched this for quite a while to try to find out what the history was, and really, nobody knows.
Okay.
I mean, the best guess, the wetland mitigation that John described is our best guess at part of that. I know that happened, the payment of that happened while I was here. We refer to that inside the department as sins of the past, because that happened, long before I came on board, and it just was a mitigation that was never paid by the county. So we ended up paying that, and I think we wrote that check in September of 2018. It's emblazoned in my mind. But the rest of that and the payments of that are unknown to me.
All right, any more questions on the loan? So we need to get things going here, so let's go ahead to the second part of this.
We'll talk about that, certainly. So the hangar development project, Mr. Rembold and his team have brought forward the hangar development project. During the public facilities meeting, we talked about the horizontal portion of the hangar project, which is already approved and funded. And that is, this is the next step. So during that meeting, the public facilities team asked, how do we fund the vertical construction of the hangars? And that is the request that's come for you, forward to you now. We have presented 3 options. Of course, there's many different ways to do this. One of these is a request of a transfer from the general fund balance of that full amount to pay for the hangars. John's finance staff put together what they consider will be the return on investment for that hangar project once they're fully leased out. You probably are aware from previous conversations that the hangars at Beaufort Executive are 100% full and stay 100% full. There's at least 63 people on the waiting list for additional hangars. These hangars will be fully occupied the day that they're open, and they have a certificate of occupancy to be filled, and they will be collecting fees and rent for aircraft in those facilities. Each new aircraft that is home-based at Beaufort Executive generates tax dollars to Beaufort County. The tie-down fees and hangar fees all go back to Beaufort Executive and will help Beaufort Executive have a revenue, the sustainable revenue in which they can reinvest in their airport. So option 1 allows for that maximum reinvestment into the airport because they will have not created any new debt. Option 2 is just that, to create new debt. Option 2 is the request for the same funding with a structured financing option. So this would be, Beaufort Executive would pay back Beaufort County on an annual basis as shown in the project. And then option 3, which is shown as well, is another opportunity, but that was to include those funds in the GO bond. Now the GO bond is at second reading tonight. It could be, of course, it's weird music. I don't know. It's yeah. It could be included in the GO bond, but the GO bond would have to be amended to go forward if that is something that you chose to do. So those are the 3 options that we're requesting to forward to council, or whichever you might choose.
If I could just ask, you said.
Yes, sir.
The infrastructure part went before the Public Facilities Committee?
Yes, sir.
Now,
John or Jared, you want to talk about that some?
Has the hangars, though, approval has not gone through Public Facilities? I mean, I don't remember seeing the $4.3 million amount even approved, because this looks like we're just approving the money, but I don't even think we've talked about hangars at the airport at any point, what the cost would be and what's gonna be designed and what's there.
Well, that covers the cost of the vertical construction. So we came to Public Facilities with the contract recommendation for the site work construction, and it's because we had funding for that. So one of the options, as we looked at this as a group, was we could do all the site work, we've got it funded, and then that site work can just sit until we slowly gain enough revenue to build, part of a building at a time or one building at a time over the next, 10 to 15 years, and eventually have a hangar complex out there.
So should the approval of this go through Public Facilities, or obviously we're approving the money, but the actual approval of the buildings themselves, should that go through Public Facilities instead of coming through us before?
It doesn't have to go to both committees.
Okay.
If Finance wants to refer to public facilities, it would go to council, then they refer it back at the end of the meeting.
So I think this is why we kind of looked at this as 2 projects. So on this one, we're actually doing 2 things. One, we're looking at approving money for the hangars, and then secondly, finding where the money's gonna come from. So, so there is two parts to this even as a project.
Part of the construction project through finance begins with a budget confirmation form. So, while John has some plans, in order for it to go to design and construction, it starts with, where's your money coming from? So likely, we would come here first, make sure they have a funding source, and then come back to facilities with the design and approval for the project itself, to go out for solicitation.
I just want to make sure we all see, I'm on the second page, option one. I think go a little farther down. The total cost of this is 7.1 million. That's site work and construction. And we have, if you go down a little bit, maybe, Sarah? Is it down there?
Yeah, right there.
Nope, that's not it. Maybe it's above it? No, it's,
Item.
it's page 2 of this thing.
That's where
I've
it
got this
says
page.
project
option,
scope.
Item 9.
That, right there. So the total cost with site work and construction, 7.1 million.
Right.
Just so nobody thinks we're only looking for 4.3 million. And we have, American Rescue Plan, I'm not gonna say ARPA, 1.4 million. And then you have South Carolina Aeronautics, we applied for pending grant, 1.388. So
And-
current funds 2,788, and we're looking for an additional 4,303,000.
Right, so we've got, that site work is now, we did go in front of the South Carolina Aeronautics Commission, that grant's been approved, so the site work's completely funded at this point.
Okay.
The delta is the 4.303.
So, John, question with option 2, could there still be a way to give y'all a loan on that and waive the previous 712? Because I don't see that listed in there unless I'm missing it.
That's not one that we looked at, I mean, it's, you know,
So I think
Council
y'all being
could-
an enterprise fund, I think having a favorable, loan option would be good. But then, sins of the past, maybe we can absolve you of that while we do it.
And it does help somewhat, but I would refer you to at the bottom of each one of these options, or in that option, there's a box that describes a very conservative layout of how these individual hangars might be rented out. And this, again, what are we up to, 68 people? We have 68 people waiting on a waiting list. So it's somewhat jokingly referred to as the organ donor list, because there's a pretty good chance you're not gonna get a hangar at Beaufort. And that doesn't sell well for the county. So you have county residents who go to other counties looking for hangars, and then paying taxes in other counties as well for those hangars. So we're expatriating revenue from Beaufort County to other counties. So when we looked at this project and we came to, with Jared and with finance, we had no idea at the airport that the fund balance might be able to support this project. But when that option was presented to us, it sounded like a great idea because of the return on investment. So if you look at what a loan program would do for the airport could generate, just over $14,000 a year in revenue from the activity associated with those hangars. Now, that excludes fuel purchases and things like that, but you hear John mention that just last year we paid a mediocre, or a small, modest $10,000 payment on that outstanding unstructured loan. Well, that leaves us with $4,300. And you cannot execute the type of deferred projects that you see in this package with $4,300 a year. We have millions of dollars worth of deferred safety projects that we need to execute. And so that's one of the primary reasons that we lean so heavily on option 1, is that it would be definitely for this council the most impactful decision that you would make on behalf of the airport. There's no doubt about that. And frankly, when you look at the personal property tax that comes, from the airport, there wouldn't be airplanes if there wasn't an airport, into the general fund, that made that option of the payment from general fund to support this project more appetizing to the airport than something like a GO bond, because we feel that that money's been contributed from the airport to the general fund over the years.
But John, option 1 doesn't give you much return on your investment. Your whole structural revenue doesn't really give you much return on your investment.
Well, option one,
it's
sir,
almost
would
like-
give us $218,000 annually
But
return
if
on
you
that
had to service
investment.
that loan, if you had a loan to service.
That's option two.
That's what my point is. If you
And
have to
that's-
service a loan.
Yes.
For that investment, you're not making much money, so you're not charging enough revenue, or what is it?
No, sir, if we have to service a loan, that takes you to option two. And that's where the revenue to the airport would be more in the ballpark of $14,000, which is 15 times less than what the airport would realize if the entire project was funded by the fund balance. So if the airport did not have to borrow funds to execute the project.
The investment is the hangars.
Correct.
That's what you're borrowing for.
Yes.
Right. And if you had to buy, if you had $7 million investment out there, you're not bringing back much return from those hangars in revenue. Am I missing something?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I can tell you that the revenue, the ROI estimate that we generated at the $218,000 is fairly conservative. Because when we look at the different items that are involved in the project, we've got, the large box hangar, for example, that's listed two different ways. We could rent that out on a monthly basis where you recognize less revenue. We kind of liken this to the apartment versus hotel. So in a hotel, you're gonna go get a whole lot more money per room night than you are in an apartment. So we'd prefer to rent that out as a hotel. So for transient aircraft moving into that hangar, you can recognize significantly more revenue. This is a pretty conservative estimate, saying that you might have, an aircraft, a large aircraft in there is, an owner of an aircraft that's a several $1 million aircraft is willing to pay a couple $100 a night to put that underneath a roof. So very conservatively, we said that we would rent that out at, for basically half the month and make $36,000 off of that. That's probably a pretty low estimate. So I think the $218,000 that you see there is a pretty conservative estimate on what that revenue would look like on an annual basis.
I don't have a problem with the 218 number that you're using throughout your proposal, option 1, 2, and 3. My concern is really, if you had to borrow those funds, even the $4 million funds, you're breaking even. That's basically.
If I could help you out, Mr. Glover, obviously
Help
you're
me.
saying that we've got a $7 million investment, and we're only bringing in $15,000 a month, $17,000 a month in rent, but on a $7 million investment is where you're heading.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would go.
So we're running out of time here, so
Yeah, we
what
are.
would this committee like to do on this?
So, just for clarification, option 1 takes money from the general fund balance, and you're asking us to waive the loan, so we're not using enterprise funds, we're using general fund balance, correct?
Correct.
Because at the beginning of this entire thing, when you talked about the FAA, you said you're an enterprise fund.
Correct.
This now puts it on the taxpayers in the general fund balance. We're gonna use general fund money.
It is, but what I described to you with the personal property tax money that's generated at the airport, we feel that that's more than been deposited into the general fund from the airport with no, there's not been a funding of a project at the airport using that general fund balance. This would be the first request that we'd make to use some of that funding.
But you don't show that in this report. That's revenue coming in. I understand what you're saying, but you don't show it in this report, that's all.
Yes, sir.
You do?
There is a paragraph there, I'll talk about it real quickly. There's a paragraph there that describes the tax revenue from that. We worked with the auditor. The auditor, and we have two different numbers, it's between 170 and 195 taxable aircraft in Beaufort County that generate bills around $1 million a year. And the revenue is around $600,000 per year on the taxable aircraft that are home-based in Beaufort County, many of which are at Beaufort Executive. It's a little paragraph in there, I can show you where it is.
Oh, okay. That helps a lot, yeah.
All right, well, do we want to vote on this?
I don't have a problem voting on it. I like number 2 better than I like number 1. I would even go instead of 2.5%, you know, a low percentage.
And anything we do would have to be sent to county council for.
Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about a hybrid approach? I'm just worried about, at this stage of the game, everybody's coming out trying to get the excesses in the general fund. I wanna fund a project, but can we do a hybrid approach where we're taking 2 million from the general fund, no return on loan, and then do a $2.3 million structured loan?
We can
And
look at
waive-
any,
And waive the seven.
we can work with finance and look at any options that you might recommend.
Do you wanna, instead of deferring it so things can still move forward, do we wanna vote to move this to county?
Well, that was gonna be my next question, Mr. Robinson. Is there a need for us to pass this, to move this to county council, for both project 1 and project 2?
We would like for you to move project 1 forward so we can get to work on purchasing vehicles. That would be great. Project 2, it can come forward any way you like. The sooner we can establish a funding source, the sooner we can get design and work done. So it's really up to you, whatever your desire is, but
There's probably less urgency on number 2 because we do have that site work fully funded. We will begin the site work. It's just a matter of how long you wanna look at pads prep for buildings without buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of taking project 1 and pushing project 2 to later. Because as you said, we still have to do the site work. There's no urgency for that one.
Okay.
I feel an urgency for the fleet.
All right, so we need to have a motion that brings that forward then, so.
Before you do that, stay right here.
Whoop, he's gonna fix this.
For the dollar amount for project 1, you'll see in the ordinance, in the preamble, and in the order, that it says 3.2 million, but the backup talks about 3.3 million, just under 3.3. So if you're gonna move that forward, I would recommend that you amend it to 3.3 going forward. And then part of the amendment would be to remove project 2 from the ordinance going forward, so we just bring project 1 forward at this time. So- Does that make sense? I think that's what I heard you guys
Yeah,
talk
that-
about.
That makes sense.
Yeah. We'll take that.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
To move project
Second.
1 for 3.3 million, that's what you just said, and remove project 2 for later.
Okay, so you got a second, so now you have to take a vote on the amendment.
All right, vote on the amendment. Any discussion? Is there any objection? No objection, so it passes.
So then you have to vote on the main motion,
So the main motion is
to move it forward to council.
to move
As
forward to
amended.
council. But project 1 is gonna go to council, and project 2 has been pulled back for a later
Is
date.
withdrawn from the ordinance, and we'll take care of that. So you're voting on the main motion as amended is what you're voting on.
Okay. And any discussion? Seeing no discussion?
Are we voting on a particular option, or?
It's on the table already.
So for the first one,
The fleet.
Yeah.
the fleet.
What I'm saying, but option 1, 2, or 3 of,
Well, I guess we need to decide that then as well. What
If
option
you,
is there?
if you want to change it from project 1, which was recommended, you'd have to amend it.
no, what I'm saying is the options inside
For
of
project
the
1.
funding options.
But the recommendation was for option 1.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you want a
Then
different
no,
option,
no,
you'd have to
I'm
amend
good.
it.
I'm good.
Good with option 1?
There's
All right.
option 1 for 3.3, right?
That's
Yeah,
3.3, and that's for the purchase of the vehicles.
right.
All right, is there any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that will be moved to county council. All right, so we've got 11 minutes left here.
It was a good discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I hate, these are all important things, I hate to cut things short. Hank, can you,
I'm ready.
all right,
Ready.
shoot,
Auction.
go.
No, we need to probably move in second for discussion so we don't forget to.
Yeah, let me, I recommend approval to council, a resolution to accept grant funds from the South Carolina Department of Commerce in the amount of $100,000 in support of Project Micro.
I'll make a motion.
Would make motion, is there a second?
I'll
Second. Any discussion? Nope, okay, discussion.
Project Micro is the project that we brought an application to council a month or so ago, and you approved the submitting and signing of that application. This is simply the awarding of that application. It's very similar to Project Green or Project Comida, where we act as the pass-through, because Department of Commerce gives it to the county. I work with Kelly and John from Economic Development. They make sure that the money is spent, they submit receipts, then the Department of Commerce gives it to us, and we pass it through to the end user as a reimbursement.
All right,
Could you just, for the record of people listening, on page 41, you talk about the commitment of the company to invest not less than $7.1 million and create not less than 35 new jobs. I think the public should hear that.
Right, and I know that John has reported on this in the past, but I don't have it in front of me. But this is a big project that does kitting of aerospace products that is used in the building up in Gardens Corner, right on the 17 and 21. Great reuse of the building. They're gonna expand that building. This money is for the expansion of that building. And the way Department of Commerce works is on any of their grants, there are thresholds that you must exceed in order to be eligible, and they have done so to prove that in the application process. And if they were ever to do something, there is a clawback process at the state level that would then do this. But ours is reimbursement as they go forward, and then there's a 5-year period, I believe, to create and invest that money.
all right, any more discussion? Okay, move forward with a vote. Is there any objection to the motion that we have and seconded?
No.
All right, this will be approved without objection, and I see no objection, so this has been approved. Fire away with number 11, and that is recommend approval to council to a contract award to design, build team Mitchell Construction and Coast Architects for the IFB 080824 Agnes Major and Wesley Felix Community Centers.
Mr. Chairman, is there a rush on this here? Because I have a lot of comments on this.
Yeah, so do
Well,
I.
And that's something that obviously we gotta be done here by 5.
Yeah, I don't think
Shall we
you're
move it
gonna
on to the
have-
next
I
one?
need at least 10
Well-
minutes to talk.
Can't county council start later than 5, so we can have a full discussion?
I
They may
just
not
think
like
that,
it,
I have some discussion on this here, so.
You have two options. One would be to have county council be delayed, as Travis says, to follow immediately after this meeting, or to postpone this to the next committee.
When's the next finance committee meeting? That's the catch.
We don't need to postpone this.
Yeah, we don't wanna, I don't wanna postpone it myself.
We need to
Can we
move this.
ask county council to be
Just,
delayed?
it starts
If you
later.
want to discuss it, I have no problem.
Yeah, me either.
All right, well then,
Mr.
Go
McGowan
ahead.
will live with it.
yes, well, let's, a motion to, for this item. So we do need a motion for this item, for us to discuss it. Is there a motion?
I'll motion.
All right, and a second?
No, what was the motion?
For us to
Motion to discuss.
consider this item and to discuss it.
To consider it now?
Yes.
No,
No,
for
I don't
discussion.
have
Sir,
discussion.
just, this
To
is for
have a full
discussion.
discussion.
Okay, so you wanna wait?
I prefer waiting because it's gonna really,
We're gonna take as much time as we need right
Yeah.
now.
If you wait, you have to wait till the next finance meeting.
Which is in
okay,
November.
then we'll open for discussion then, yes, okay.
I'll second it.
All right, second, all right. So it's open for discussion. Go ahead, Hank, go
Okay.
ahead. and-
Just as a background, the reason that we're here and we put this on the agenda, this is one of the original projects for community centers to be built. The plan was to put them in parks so we can have joint use of these facilities. Wesley Felix on St. Helena is a very nice park, nice fields, there'll be continued improvements, and that's where that would be located on St. Helena. The question earlier about health center, this is not a competitive staffed, this is not to compete with Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton Comprehensive Health. This is a community center that is at a parks facility, both this and the one in Sheldon, which would be at Agnes Major Park, that were part of the original plan for the ARPA funds. So the reason I'm glad you're hearing it tonight is because obligations have to happen by the end of
By
this year.
December.
And so if we
Oh,
if we can have it potentially go through here and to go to council on November 12th, I believe is the date, then that would give us time to have a contract in place to obligate those funds, and therefore, and this is the base plan from when we started. I've kind of had a couple pictures of potential site, of where the sites were sent for the RFP process. We had 5 bids, a lot of interest. It's not a tremendously large building, but it's a base floor plan that will go through the design build process with this joint company of Mitchell and Coast to have movable walls. We've had community discussions about having it flexible where you could open up walls to have a larger room, have smaller rooms by sliding walls for classrooms, after school, senior programs. And additionally, if, God forbid, there was ever another pandemic, this becomes an outreach center, but it's not a competitive health center like the one that's operated near our library and by Leroy Brown Center on St. Helena. But I kind of gave you the history, 5 bidders. We went down, I was not a part of the procurement process. They went down to 2. They went and negotiated back and chose the one, and then negotiated this price. It is slightly over the allocated a dollar amount of $3 million for these 2 buildings. As I showed in my report last month and again this month, there are other projects that have been under or over, and in the original ordinance that council adopted when budgeting these funds, it said, in anticipation of that, administration, council, and committee can move the money to cover these projects, because some are not gonna happen, some are gonna be a little bit less expensive, and some are gonna be a little bit more expensive. This is slightly more expensive than the 3, but the money, there's one more community center that is to be built on DeFusky, and that is in the bond that you're having second reading on tonight. This is actually lower than we thought this was gonna come in. We're glad to have 2 buildings for the 3. We were afraid that 3 wouldn't even cover a building and a half. And so this would get those 2 projects rolling, and the RFP for the St. Helena one is also, and the Fusky Island project should be in for next month's meeting. If you have any more questions about the project, we can talk about it.
What's the square footage in these buildings?
It's just over 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Is it 2,000?
I have some.
I don't have the thing in front of me. I think it's 2,000, 2,500, but I don't have the diagram in front of me.
Yeah.
We have it here if you.
It just seemed inadequate, that's all. 2,500 square feet is just inadequate.
Well, but this money as well needs to be allocated by the end of the year to qualify for ARPA funds, is that? So
Yes, sir.
that's why this has to be allocated money that's approved by end of the year.
Right, but we don't, if you don't want to force feed it, we don't have to force feed it, and we can do something else. But this is something that we've worked on since the first quarter of 2022, and the building has been that size throughout the process. So we're just bringing it to council and committee for
I had
approval.
a question. You said they have movable walls, so the there's the bathrooms and then movable walls, so the area could be divided up
Right.
depending on the needs if you had one small group.
Right,
big
versus a
group.
bigger community meeting or some sort of information sharing like you guys have done all over the county.
Yeah, I would say that, if you said 2,000 square feet?
I don't have the piece of paper in front of me. I believe it's between 2,000, the one I sent you, the aerial view, or there was a floor plan that I sent to Brendan. And it's in the
I think
RFP.
your aerial view says
There it
about
is. It's right there.
2,000 square feet or so.
Yeah, but
Right there.
Yeah.
Hey, 3,800 square feet, how about that?
Okay, that's better. That's better. That's a
You
whole
get-
lot
You're
better.
getting up there.
Hey, but look at these, yeah, look at these.
Yeah.
But, and it's, again, it's multi-use, flexible space, and that's what we heard from community members and others when we spoke to even surrounding counties, was make sure you don't put these hard walls that box this place up, so that if you have a larger event, you can slide it open. If you have smaller needs for, who knows, after-school program, senior program, or class situation, you could make it smaller, or if there was another pandemic in the future, that you could even have testing or vaccine administration or whatever would might be needed. But we wanted to do it at a park facility, so that it also can double as a recreational facility for those same reasons that I just said.
Yeah, as we all know, we just tore down and demolished the Agnes Major Center because it was mold infested, but it was relatively small, much smaller than what's being proposed here. So that if it's 38,000 square foot in the floor space, then I would support that for the Agnes Major. We have a relatively small community in the Agnes Major, and talking with our Parks Director, Mr. Brown, he and I both believe that this will suffice for the Agnes Major. So I can't speak for St. Helena, and I'm not gonna try and speak for St. Helena, but I would like for us to move this forward, for the ag major.
I have some questions.
Good, sound good.
So this was decided upon for ARPA in quarter of 2022?
When council received the funding,
Okay.
it was one of the
And
original projects were
the money
community.
came from the federal government, is that what I understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So it says National Park Service signage. Is this gonna have is this gonna be a national park?
No, National Park Service signage was a separate
That's
project
separate.
that was not.
Oh, that's
not on
separate,
this.
okay,
And you're not gonna be able to do that.
okay.
They are
So
not moving forward.
is this community center the same one we talked about in the community services meeting a couple months ago?
No.
This is separate, this
That's
is a
Arts
different,
Center.
okay. So this is for
Yeah,
a
yeah,
health,
yeah,
de-
yeah.
the health, or?
This
what
is for a
this?
community center that can be multi-use at these two parks for community meetings, senior programming, after-school, summer camp,
Okay.
or even recreation league
Okay.
activities out in the community.
Well, Mr. Terrell was here talking about a health facility or something.
Right, I explained it to him. That's why I
Oh,
went
you
outside.
did? Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, any more discussion?
Where exactly is the one on St. Helena? I know where the other one is.
Mm-hmm.
On St. Helena?
Felix?
What
Yeah,
road is it?
where is it on St.
Ballpark.
Ballpark Road? Oh, yeah, okay.
We own the land, right?
Yes, ma'am, and it's a nice park.
This nice part?
That doesn't have a building that you can really do something in. So we were in current, just as an aside, we have RFPs currently out to do improvements at other parks. These two facilities are both nice parks in good parts of the county that need services.
So, Mr. Glover, we heard from Mr. Dawson. What's your take on the Felix one?
I think it's just inadequate spacing. I think 6,000 seems to be a good number to work with. That's all.
Well, I would, to Mr. Glover's point, I would openly admit that St. Helena is a much larger residential area and population than what we have in Sheldon. And so I understand his concern. That having been said, then I would ask us that we separate these projects and move one forward while we deal with the other.
I'd just like to mention that, St. Helena does have a senior center at Beaufort Health that's, pretty active, so.
We
Right. I
We have
mean,
senior
so-
services there at the Leroy
Yeah,
Brown
well,
Center and also at Scott.
At Scott, so.
Yeah.
So by not moving one of the projects forward, we then run the risk of not
I would,
meeting the,
I would disagree with Mr. Dawson on that. I think you should move the project forward. I'm just gonna vote against it, that's all.
okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
Sounds good.
Because I was gonna agree with Mr. Dawson on moving them both forward. So that's where we sit right now is if there's no more discussion, we can go ahead and move this forward. So we have a first and a second. We've had discussion. Is there any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will move this forward without objection. Is there an objection?
Just one.
One objection, any other objections? Sarah, if you can note Mr. Glover's objection. This will be move forward then to council. Again, council would need to vote on this. All right, so that has been approved. Let's move on then to our calendar, and the calendar. Again, this is just for our review at this point, discussion. And again, I would probably say that we can discuss this at a later time at our next meeting.
I don't know that we can.
It has to be done by November.
Has to be done. Only thing I'd like, real quick to say,
Mhm.
committee men, if we consider the second one, where we start our meetings at 6, then we need to start the committee meetings at 4, not 3.
I would agree with
So the next
that.
version, I'd like to see, when we discuss it, that we start committee at 4 and meetings at 6 as an option.
I agree with you.
And I have one other suggestion. So I spoke to our clerk to council. We do, if you look at the alternate that was just placed with us, we rotate out of this place once a quarter. So once a quarter, I'm gonna suggest when we take that show on the road, as she calls it, that should be south of the Broad. Because these are all north of the Broad, and if we're only gonna do one a quarter, we should move south of the Broad that's only 4 times a year. And we have it at St. Helena, then it would only be twice a year for south of the Broad. So my recommendation would be to change it, then when we're on the road show, whatever you wanna call it, we go between Hilton Head Library and Buckwalter. Those are the two that can accommodate the TV. That's my
All right, any more discussion?
I'd be okay with that too.
All right, so if you'd like to, so again, if you look at the tentative schedule we have, and again, this would go to county council as well for approval, is that we have moving our meetings to 6 PM is the biggest difference in here. And I think that the time of the committee meetings can be adjusted according to that after, if this is approved. So moving council meetings to 6, even though I enjoy the 5 o'clock, for us to get home at a reasonable time after, driving 45 minutes, but then, so Tab, I need to have you make an amendment, a recommendation for an amendment, that we make all the show on the road council meetings south of the Broad.
Yes, so the quarterly show on the road would be south of the Broad. And the committee starts at 4, so it would, and the south of the Broad would be Hilton Head, Buckwalter, Hilton Head, Buckwalter.
All right, is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
All right, is there any more discussion? If there's no more discussion, we will approve this without objection. This will then go to county council. Is there any objection?
He wants to talk.
No, that's not.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you over.
We're
Mr.
good,
Dawson.
we're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
All right, so this then will be approved without objection. That will then move to county council. And then the final thing that I've got, and we'd like to take all these at one time if possible. If anyone wants to pull these out and do them separately, we'd be happy to do it. But let me just read through them real quick. Recommend approval of appointment of Joel Braun to the Southern Carolina Allowance Board of Directors for partial term with expiration date of February 2027. Library appointment, recommend approval of appointment of Kathleen Cooper to the Library Board for a 4-year term with the expiration date of October 2028. The Keep Beaufort County Beautiful Board appointment, recommend approval of appointment of Eugene Zappel to the Keep Beaufort County Beautiful Board for a partial term with the expiration date of February 2026. Stormwater Management Utility Board, this is a reappointment, recommend approval of the reappointment of Patrick Mitchell to the Stormwater Management Utility Board for a 4-year term with the expiration date of 2028. And the last one, Low Country Council of Governments, this is a reappointment, recommend approval of the reappointment of Herbert Glaze to the Low Country Council of Governments for the 4-year term with the expiration date of October. I'd ask for someone to take those all at one time with the.
I'm gonna throw a wrinkle in there.
Okay.
And actually ask that the Stormwater Management Utility Board reappointment be removed separately.
Okay.
Or be taken separately on that one.
All right, so there's a motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it for discussion.
Yeah, for discussion purposes, Mr. Mitchell was actually late getting his reappointment paperwork in, and I'd already been in communication with Mark Presnell in my on Ladies Island. The county had been in communication with him. He actually experienced significant flooding in his own property during Hurricane Debbie, and I thought he would be a good candidate for that position. And given the fact that the county had communicated with him and Mr. Mitchell was late getting his reappointment paperwork in, I thought he'd be a good candidate to get in, but the fact he's not considered here, I think is a bit frustrating, but I understand, but I would like to take that separate.
I'd just like to mention, Mr. Mitchell was out of town when the paperwork was sent. The chairman, of the Stormwater Board spoke very highly of Patrick Mitchell. Yes, I'll speak up, thank you. Mr. Mitchell was out of town when the paperwork was sent. The chairman of the Stormwater Board was very supportive of Mr. Mitchell, and that I'd just like to add that. He's been on it a long time and has a very good attendance record. I go to those meetings, and so Mr. Mitchell apologized, but he said he had been out of town and he was apologetic about not getting the paperwork in, and the chairman wanted to see him renominated too. Just leave it at that.
All right, so we have an amendment that we would handle the one appointment separately. If there's no more discussion, we will go ahead and vote on that.
I didn't get a second, sorry.
I'll second. I seconded for discussion, yes.
All right, so there's a second. We have a first and a second. So the question at hand is whether we're going to take all these at once or separate them out and pull out the reappointment to the Stormwater Management Board. Is there any objection to doing what Mr. Bartholomew has asked?
Would we then just delay that one?
That's what I
until
do.
the
We're gonna
next
vote on
meeting?
it, we're gonna vote on taking the first ones, then we'll have to decide on the second one.
Because we only have one nominated, so we'd have to bring it back to finance. Okay, I'm okay with that.
All right, so we have now separated them, so now we're gonna vote on the first ones. So the first group excluding the stormwater, I need a motion to accept all those appointees.
I'll make the motion.
All right, and second, Ms. Brown.
Okay.
All right, and is there any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will then accept the appointees, all of, that has been listed, except for the Stormwater Management Board. They will be pushed to county council. And then that leaves us then the stormwater.
And I would just ask that we postpone that to the next,
Or you can move to amend it and add his name.
well, I'd want people to see the applications if they come forward.
Yeah.
Since it would be two, at least get a
So-
chance to review
And
it in a
I'd
fair
like
shot.
for,
Make a motion.
I would agree to
Make a
that. We
motion.
need to defer it until we can seriously consider both, if we're gonna consider
All
both.
right, so
And I just want to be considered, I mean, if you don't
Yeah.
get, you know.
so that was a.
Yeah, a motion
Motion
to,
made and a
to
second.
postpone to a date certain for the next finance committee meeting.
Mr. Dawson, did you second that? Or,
I second it, go ahead.
I will.
okay,
Thank
Mr. Dawson, I thought you had put your hand up to second it, so that has been, is there any more discussion on that? So what the motion is to move the reappointment for stormwater management to the next meeting, which then would have Mr. Patrick Mitchell as a candidate and, I'm
Mark.
sorry, yes,
Patrick-
Mr.
Patrick
Mitchell.
Mitchell
And then a second candidate
Mark
at that
Rosendahl.
time, or whoever, one of the candidates we have would look at that at that point.
Thank you.
All right, is there any objection to that? All right, seeing no objection, that has been approved. Is there anything else to come before this council?
And just to be clear, it was moved to the next finance committee meeting.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else to come before this committee? We appreciate everyone's patience. Sorry we have gone late, and the next council, the county council meeting will start probably in 10 minutes, so 5:22. Is that good enough, everybody? Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you so much.